Mikey's final. Takes up a lot of
Man,
time.
those are dangerous. You only fall into those traps a couple times. And then you just Haldini, you just sneak off.
I tried to sneak away. You got me.
I was standing at the exit. I had you locked in.
Every time I turned to leave, there you were with a beer.
Love it.
Hey, you know what, though? You don't make good memories by going to bed early.
You only make...
There might be some holes in that logic, Mike.
This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I am your host and moderator for the day, Bud, here with Moneyball Ross and Data Mike. And Data Mike is on the road. Look at that bamboo in the background hanging out. It's got to be fake because it's inside.
I don't think it's fake. Somebody just has to water it.
I think it needs a little water.
I mean, you know, it's probably fake.
Oh, Mike, check it out. Is it real? Is it real or fake?
Let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's a little plasticky. I'm gonna guess it's fake. Maybe
Big
it needs a little
guy over here. I can track the plants. My wife has a shit ton of plants at our house. I can track them early. I know what they look like. I know if you gotta water it.
Must be a pretty good fake if it took you that long to figure it out.
Oh no, I figured it out right away.
Bud can spot them from 10,000 miles away.
10,000 miles away. Oh, I love it. Were you having fun on site, Mikey?
Always, man. It's always fun being out in the market, you know, bouncing around, meeting up with reps, riding with team leads, and seeing new areas, new markets, and different accounts. I always love it.
Did you swing a golf club last night?
Do you think I swung a golf club last night, Bud?
Did you at least try?
No, we didn't golf there. We just had some beers, but man, so for the listeners, it's like a privately owned Top Golf, right? So different experience, not exactly a ripoff, but designed very similar with like a really cool like interior bar area that all opens up garage doors. And yeah, it was awesome. The only feedback I gave, we're sitting at the bar and you're kind of behind the people and you can't see like all the bays. And I was like, you know what? This bar needs to be positioned just off to the left and the same level of all the bays so you can sit at the bar and talk shit about all the people golfing, you know, criticize them. And it's all open air concept. So you could probably get heckling them as they're swinging.
Well, do you have any advice for their back bar in terms of the products? Did you sell some high GP stuff while you were there?
Always, man. You know, we're always talking high GP stuff.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. We should grab a video, Ross, of that when we golfed together in that trip on that business trip, and you were like,
"Good, yeah.
Seriously, you're gonna make me go golfing? I suck at golfing." You were so worried. I was like, don't worry about it, Ross. What did I tell you? It's like, don't worry about it. We'll have a good time. You'll be just fine.
Well, I mean, the biggest hole I have is around driving, and you brought me the gun,
the Power Golf Club.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, man.
Oh, the power shot.
My short game's fine. I just I never really figured out how the whole driving thing.
It was awesome. He drove the ball straight all day. It was the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's always right on target. I mean, but here's the irony. Even though I had like the CO2 powered gun, I couldn't even drive as far as the other guys.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah, not Bud. Definitely not Bud.
It gives you some idea how far Bud can drive it.
I mean, it's a mechanical club. It was fun. We'll grab a video of that at some point and we'll talk about it some more. It'll take me too long to find it today. It's in
there was the one time though, like Bud's like, "Oh, turn it a little bit more. He, like shot it, like bounced off somebody's like backyard patio. We thought it was going for their window.
Oh God.
What are you gonna do next time? I'll move my hands just like this. Just like this. I love it. So today we have our little topic of discussion, a little educational session we want to talk about is around budgeting. And as this comes out right before Halloween, this is your trick or treat episode, right? We are going to be in budget season or probably really close to budget season, definitely in ABP season. And what a little teaser episode about this too is that I had a great kind of prep call yesterday, boys, with a client who wants to come on the pod and talk about what they're doing to shift their ABP meetings for the year. So I'm excited that'll kind of dovetail into this really nicely when we get that episode done too. So one of the things that I take a lot of pride in when we ran Atlas, and Ross, I know you did too, is around setting a budget and setting a target for the year from a financial metric. So to me, budgets are something that you look at once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe do some re-guidance, but really you're kind of building out your financial plan for the P&L of the business. And we've got a lot of leaders that listen to this. And if you're a rep, don't turn it off just yet, because this will play out in good knowledge for you to see what happens and how these things come together too. And one of the kind of we're going to start with how you craft a budget to get going. And I'm going to get on the soapbox for a hot second, because this is something that I still see distributors doing, because it is ABP season as well, is that they are taking those ABP plans by suppliers and they are bundling them up, and it's becoming their budget for the year. And I think there's a lot of problems related to doing your budgeting like that. Why is that? Challenge and soapbox that Bud has is that a lot of times those ABP plans are pie in the sky, production driven budgets. These are things that suppliers want to get done across their whole network of distributors, and you are a component of that. There isn't a lot of institutional knowledge that's been driven down to the decision of why you got one number in your market over another person got another number. They're taking a high level budget and goal and spreading it organically throughout their organization. So while you could have it as something that you talk about, I am a focused and big believer around that you have to own your budget process from the bottom up. So Ross, I know this is something that you've done at your distributorship, being on the finance side and running the budget too. Where do you land on collaborating with ABP planning and setting your financial global targets for the organization for a year or two?
You let them pitch their number, then they walk out, and then you get to decide what the real number is. No, yep. I mean, I think that you have to separate this into two things. I mean, you did a great job of explaining that you have an internal forecast budget. And again, I'm going to use this word forecast a lot today, because I think that's something that's missing from this whole thing. And then the supplier side, I think you did a good job of explaining that it's, generally speaking, and I'm going to have words for the suppliers if they're listening to this, and if you've got supplier friends out there or suppliers you'd want to send this to, but generally speaking, what I've seen is they start with the top line number where they want to be.
And as a total supplier.
Yeah, as a total supplier, and they force that down with no other logic other than, my investors want this number, so therefore we must get it, spread it out, which is a really shitty way to plan, and even shittier way for your distributor to plan your year. So it's like, shit all the way down.
And they're spreading it through just percent of business, right? It's like, distributor A is 7% of the total business, so they're going to get 7% of the global goal. Distributor C is 0.5%, so they're going to get 0.5% of the global goal, and vice versa. And there's no real intricacy in a lot of supplier planning around ABP and where those goals is why they showed up that way, other than just a percent of business and what it has been historically in the last 12 months. If you're in a legacy market that maybe isn't growing that much, but the total supplier is growing really, really well, and they want to factor a growth factor in, that could look like a huge growth factor for you, but really that should be weighted against those growing markets that are net new markets versus that legacy market that is kind of like maybe hitting its peak or is digesting a slower growth pattern as well. So, and the other thing that is always funny to me about this, Mike, is that as distributors, when suppliers bring us incentives or marketing plans, let's pick on marketing plans. This is a great one, right? Like marketing plans, there's an immediate result and instinct of like, you don't know my market, this won't work here. Why do we let that, you don't know my market, why would you set the goal for me, filter into the budget planning? That's the piece that, it's so easy for us to go back and say, you don't know my market, this marketing plan won't work here. But yet the ABP and the budget plan flies through with like no thought process around that. You don't know my market. In a lot of distributors, not everybody's like this, but in a lot of distributors, and that attitude is just, it's lost on me, because marketing is easy for us to say no to, but like this budget plan, just let it slide by.
I mean, for me,
Yeah.
for me, it's absolutely perplexing. I mean, on the distributor side, we spend a lot of time thinking about forecasting. You know, whether you're using Blue Ridge, Order Stream, whatever you're
Your own
using.
forecasting model,
Yeah, or you're
the
you know
10
using.
digit like my dad used to use.
Yeah.
My point is that when we're ordering products from our suppliers, we are engaging in sophisticated forecasting methodologies that are brand specific, seasonally profiled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even at the supplier level, the more advanced suppliers are sitting down, their finance team, I guarantee you, is using forecasting methodologies to think about the financial planning. But then when we get into sales, all of a sudden we're like acting like it's 1980 and we've never seen a computer before. And we're, sitting around a room saying, okay, what do you think? What do you think? Okay, cool. That's the number. When, the rest of us, and again, I'm picking on sales a little bit here. I've found my way more to the sales side of the business because that's where the opportunity is. And that's, a great side of the business. But, it's important to understand each department's flaws here. And I think this is a big one for sales.
Yeah, and I think it's it goes all the way back to the old school mentality where we really, you know, whatever our supplier said, we do. Right? It's kind of like that, almost that iron fist from the supplier down of, and we're used to with the larger suppliers of saying whatever they say, we must do it, right? So when we get these ABP numbers from our smaller suppliers as well, I think it's just built into our head if that, oh yeah, they must have done the research, they did all the number crunching, and this is what they came up with, and what we're not thinking about is renegotiating that and putting some realistic goals in there, right? And actually, where is the business? Where do I stand with volume with your company? Suppliers, I mean, when they're going after and they're setting their ABPs, they're out to protect share, and that's what they're really thinking about: volume and share, right? And distributors, we really need to protect profit, and those are two different currencies. So when we're thinking about that, we need to do the research to find out realistically, where are we? Where has the business been? Where is the business heading? And put some of those realistic numbers in there. I mean, to their ABPs are really just trying to put a number up on a corporate board somewhere, right? They're trying to make their investors happy. They're trying to make their overall numbers happy. And like you said, there's not a whole lot of thought of how that really gets trickled down. Distributor A may be up 10% in volume, distributor B may be down 10% in volume, but you're both asked to get the same amount of growth because there's really no thought process. There's no research going into it.
Yeah, and the component, Mike, we lost your video. I don't know if that's something you touched or if it just turned off or what has happened. There you go. So that piece of like splitting the goal up or the target up from a supplier standpoint too, if you've got 100 distributors or 150 or even 50 distributors, like it is a painstaking process to divide it up in unique ways. And so I'm going to give them a little credit there that it's not easy to do that. That isn't the expectation. But my expectation for us as owner operators is that you need to start to own this process of where you think the financial business is going, the financial side of the business is going, and you need to translate that to sales as this is what our expectation is based on our knowledge and based on what we do know about our market, because we do know our market better than any of our suppliers do. The components of what that goal and how it makes up, I never worried about the components of how that goal got done. Suppliers would come and go, suppliers would grow and decline. It was long-term trend driven. So let's model a couple ways. Ross, I'll take my run at it and then you can take a run at it on how you did it. So let's model a couple ways of if you're like, man, I need to go through and start to own the budget on my process so then I can reflect that back out to sales. How do you get started with that? There's 4 metrics that I use. 12-month moving total. So that is the 12 months moving total of your business. The 12-month rate of change. How much on an average 12-month rate of change are you growing or declining on volume, profitability, and top line revenue? And then the same metrics for 3 months. These are going to give you a quarterly trend and a shorter term trend plus a longer term trend. It's going to give you good, solid direction. Once you have that in place, now you can start to expand and extrapolate out a revenue from what you did in 2025 or in a 12-month moving total into 2026 and beyond. And you can do it really sophisticatedly with a little bit of Excel model and not a lot of Excel knowledge either. Like, you don't need to know a pivot table, or you don't need to know a whole process. You can use just a few different numbers and cells to really drive this out. Once you get that done, then you can flow through to all your P and all your costing and like what your budget is around costing. That's even simpler in my mind. But let's, Ross, model for your team or for the team too, like how you would consider looking at that top line revenue goal, the top line volume goal, and the top line profitability goal for the team too. Would you got a different take on it, different perspective? How did you like to do it?
Yeah. So again, we're talking about distributor side. Let's make sure we're
Yep.
clear on that.
We're owning. How do we model to own our own projections for a budget?
And we're not talking about anything below net revenue, i.e. GP.
Nope.
Right, so we're
Well,
talking about
I like to talk about GP too. Yeah. Nothing below GP though.
nothing below GP. That's, maybe we'll do that as a separate piece.
Yep.
I mean, that's something you need to model too when you're on the finance side. You know, maybe I got a little fancier, but I like your metrics. Always liked them. You shared them with me when you were a customer of ours. You know, I'm a big fan of latest estimate, LE. If you're from the finance side, you're probably familiar with that term. But essentially, just like we do goal setting for our clients, it's resetting the calculation every month. And it's, for me, I get a little fancier, obviously, because I mean, I spend a lot more time in forecasting theory than you. But
Yep.
no offense.
You're better at Excel than me too.
No offense. But I would use exponential smoothing, trend adjustment, seasonal profiling. And the number was what it was, because it's simply a calculation. It's math. There's no subjectivity to it. We're not going to sit around and say, well, I think that this particular brand is going to get hot in September. None of that shit, right? The LE will capture that because it favors more recent data trend relative to the forecast, and it's adjusting itself. And we can have a whole conversation about forecast theory. But I'm a big fan of that. You know, we have a quantitative LE, you know, that is driving a number and says, here's where we're going to end, assuming all the data that we know today. If that starts to change, great. And that's where it comes back to what we focus our attention and time on is the controllables. And the controllables is the execution, right? It's what we talk about every single day on this podcast, because those are the controllables. It goes back to, what are you trying to achieve? And we're not trying to achieve a forecast. Forecast is downstream of what we're trying to achieve. And again, that's always the way I've thought about it. And we'll get into the supplier side because we have credibility here too. And I'll explain why. But, you know, I'm a big believer in quantitative first. And it is downstream of our actions.
And when you, Mikey, were working with me, we always used the budget as a slight guide. So the budget then became the slight guide to the monthly goal planning. We have some clients that do that as well too. Yeah. But it is a guide and or guardrails. It is not always gospel, because you could also be beating goal or slightly missing goal. And there could be reasons to explain that from the controllables. And I think it's good to touch on that. When you set a budget as a team or as an organization for the year, that is usually something you go through as an annualized process, and that's a set it and forget it. It's a target and a plan, and that there might be controllable changes that you need to recognize throughout the year that might modify the plan upwards or downwards. And we need to be okay with that element of it too. Right, Mike?
Yeah, super important to not set that in stone. And I want to double click into, I mean, what you talked about when we're setting these budgets. I mean, it's super important what you said with the 12-month moving total, right? I mean, that tells you who you are as a distributor. And your 3-month moving total really tells you where you're heading, right? With no emotions. And to set the foundation off of those two metrics is super important, because you're taking all of the optimism out of it. You're taking all of the, you know, fantasies of where we want to be, and it's nothing but truth of where the business has been and where it is projected to land. And you're totally right. That can't be set in stone. The same reason why we never set a yearly, quarterly budget, or not budget, but goals for our teams. Things change. Not always for the bad, but they change for the good too. They go up and down, right? We might have a new product launch that is announced mid-year that just totally blows away expectation. Right now, we're way ahead of budget. Now we kind of take a look back at that. We make adjustments. We might have an event like what happened in April of 2023 that nobody saw coming, right? That just takes your budget and throws it out the window. So you have to, just like we tell our suppliers, you have to be on your toes. You have to think on your feet. You have to be able to pivot and move and readjust. Same thing with the budget. And I see a lot of people fall into that trap where it's like, well, this was our budget. We have to stick with it. Well, there's been a lot of things this year that really, a lot of headwinds that nobody predicted coming. And yeah, that yearly budget that was set back in January is great, but now we're 13% behind that, and we have a lot of making up to do. So I think, looking at it monthly, even quarterly, and just seeing where we're at on pace, and we did a good job of that.
Well, Mike, I think you did a good distinction there, which is we're not saying that you shouldn't have an annual budget that you plan to
must.
you built, but I think having a latest estimate is key because that's the reality on the ground. And if you have to make decisions around it, I think you made a good point, which is you don't stick with your annual budget; you adjust to the reality on the ground. Now, it's important as a key metric to say where did we intend the year to be, and where are we? Because you probably did some, below the line, which we're not talking about, decision making around that annual budget. And again, having a more realistic latest estimate can guide those decisions as well.
When we build those budgets and we take our ABPs and we just say that's our budget for the year, we're planning our whole business. We're planning our financials off of somebody else's forecast. That is not in reality or tune of what our business is doing or where our business is even heading. And if you fall into that trap, you're going to start the year chasing someone else's math, spend the next 6 months explaining why you didn't hit it and trying to figure out why you didn't hit it, when all of that research could have been done in the beginning, to lay a great foundation and have a realistic budget before you even start those spends and spending versus that budget.
Let's talk about a couple of bias-driven things, Ross, because you and I both come to the decision around setting an internal budget from a quantitative piece of study. You do it a little more sophisticated, way more sophisticated than I do. Let's give you all the credit you deserve. But it's still both quantitative version. Where does the qualitative, the bias, the human element come in? That the quantitative says this, and I also know these things that are controllable or I believe are controllable. Where does that come into the financial modeling for both of us too?
I mean, again, I'm at an extreme here. I mean, the numbers were the numbers, and if the reality starts to change, the forecast model will pick it up, and you'll adjust as it. If somebody walks in and says this shit's awesome and it's going to sell like crazy, cool. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I just tend to be more that way.
But I think you're right there, Ross. I mean, when somebody walks into your conference room and they're pitching a new product, or even let's go back to the ABP planning, right? I have the supplier that's coming in. Hey, we've got this big number up here that we're shooting for. Cool. How are we going to get it? Well, here's our new product launch for. This is where we're going for 2026, and this is how we're going to get there. You have to look through that. You have to read through the lines. So are we launching another malt-based seltzer and thinking it's going to be the next big thing because we have some cool branding and a cool name on it? Or are we actually like creating a new category, right? Where is this growth that they're saying we're going to get coming from? And is it reality from what you know on the streets, right? I mean, because your business is not in a spreadsheet. It's not in a PowerPoint. Your business is on the streets. What are the streets telling you? What is your market telling you? And is what that supplier telling you, does that add up for your market as well?
What I would do for the audience is that I would bring a little bud bias into the process. I'd let the quantitative piece move the needle and set the baseline. And then I would bring in expectations that I had, things that I would do. They were still lean from quantitative to start with, but hey, are we going to have a price increase this year? Did I want to bake that into the budget or not? Some people don't like to bake in price increases, particularly if they're going to be in the fall or potentially be in the fall because you don't know about them. If they're going to be in Q1, you probably, and now it's in October, you probably already started talking about it with your largest supplier partners, or you've already seen some of those price increases hit in Q4 for some other suppliers right now. So you can bake those into 2026 planning or into the next year planning. So those are things that I would bring in. The other piece I would bring in too, Ross, is that I would look at our expectation around what we could control around growing GP per CE And if we did a price increase, how that might influence GP per CE more positively, but negatively influence negatively influence volume. Because to go back to some of our other podcasts, beer has pricing elasticity. So as you raise prices, volume is going to go down. So you had to kind of balance that out. And the other piece too is like, did I think we could continue to premiumize or accelerate that GP per CE growth too? And might layer in some more expectations around, hey, I think we're going to do this and this and this, and that's going to drive the number higher too. So I did a little more, I probably between you are more like 95% quantitative. I'm probably more like 90 to 95, 85% quantitative with 10 to 15% qualitative of bringing in a little of opinion of where I think the business is going to land too.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, the danger with that is like to get into some analysis paralysis, which is, looking at it and saying, well, is competition going to follow us? Are we signaling a price increase in October and it's the beginning of the year? Is it really going to happen? Right? Is the economy going to be soft? Is it really going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Which brands is it? Are those brands going to suffer? And are other things going to cannibalize those sales because those prices went up and other things didn't? Are you going to be able to load up your inventory so you have a lower laid in inventory cost for the rollover, and you get a whole month where you print money? Or is your inventory going to be drawn down low, right? So there's a lot of variables that go into that. I think obviously, Bud, you were running a family business with a tight ship, so I mean it was critical for how it flowed down to the bottom line.
I also wanted to be right from the standpoint of keep expectations low and beat expectations on a regular basis too. So I wanted to be right and accurate, but I also didn't want to win the conversation with the family over setting the budget high to lose the conversation later by missing expectations. And that's a really good important thing. If you're sitting in the office and you own the budget process and report to some family or have some family members that you're reporting to in some way or are setting expectations, fight with them early. It's a guaranteed win. Argue, negotiate, keep expectations low and beat them. Why? Because the key to happiness is a math equation. It's expectations over reality equals happiness. And if you can keep those expectations low and you can beat the expectations and have a higher reality, your family, the people you report to, whoever it is, grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, will be happier with the results. So fight early, fight often, negotiate early, negotiate often, so you don't have to answer for an unrealistic expectation later. Let's talk a little bit about below the line. So we're talking about costs, labor, fuel, healthcare, things like that. Honest costing there, Ross, method of the madness, latest estimate, where you just did a little bit different block and tackling. Did you take line by line, multiply by a percentage point based on a factor of growth? Some of the things that I would do, like healthcare, I kind of knew what healthcare growth was going to be by this time this year for next year. So I kind of knew that from the way we were buying our healthcare and how our calendars worked. I kind of knew what our property and casualty was going to be because we always renewed in November. So I knew what that was going to be. So I had a little bit of an idea. I had to guesstimate on some, labor increases, guesstimate on some fuel, things like that. But any advice there for folks?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it's fixed. I mean, you can project it out, and it's a lot of it's fixed cost.
Yeah,
I mean, you can try to work
very simple.
Yeah, I mean, you can try to work some of those expenses, and you should have goals to try to work some of those costs down. You set some objectives for the year in terms of working some of those costs down, but at the end of the day, and this is, somebody that started on the finance operation side, it's the money's on the sales side. Growing sales 5% is way more impactful than cutting costs by 5%.
Always, every day. We've done both and at Atlas in our operations, and we always saw way more benefit, way more fun as well. As you and I both talked, well, the three of us have talked about a ton, way more fun.
And we like to make our world complex, but again, it goes back to what I said last week. These are annuity businesses. So much of it is fixed, predictable cost, right? I mean, yeah, fuel goes up and down. You should be modeling that. You should be, building an LE around, what those expenses look like. But it's not like we're building data centers for 1,000% AI growth around here. We may refresh our building every 40 years, 50 years,
Yeah.
buy some more trucks,
Fix some ceiling tiles.
sit around and spend an hour, spend an entire day talking about buy versus lease. I mean, I've been in that room. I mean, I spent the whole day talking about buy versus lease.
There's no good way to buy a car, just various bad ways that are better for you. I love it. So Ross wanted to move into, a segment that you really wanted to lead us through because you've got background with annual planning and kind of the supplier's role in ABP. So tell us a little bit about the background you have from a credibility standpoint, and then also walk us through what you wanted to share on your planning while we were putting together the pod today too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important for me. We don't do a ton of backstory here, but I think from where we sit, I think a lot of people think about this as a beer distributor podcast, and we spend a lot of time talking about the supplier side too. And I think it's important to acknowledge that from a credibility standpoint, we do have the ability to speak relative to the supplier side. One, we've all engaged them our entire lives, but two, when I left the distributor side, I founded two companies. One was supplier focused, so that was completely interfacing with the supplier side. And the other piece is when I was initially building these companies from the ground in the early days, to supplement, I consulted for two craft breweries. At the time, they were relatively small. I might as well name them Hop Valley and 10 Barrel. And those two ended up becoming very large, one acquired by ABI, the other one acquired by MC. But I think what's important to pull out of that element of what we were doing or what I was doing for them at the time is a lot of this planning was an essential element, and I think a key component of why they ended up being successful as successful as they were, is that because the sales forecast / budget, ADP, was driven the same way the financial planning and production planning was driven. It was forecast driven. It was looking at each individual market. I think that was a great call out, Bud, because I don't think a lot of these suppliers are doing this. They need to, because these markets are growing at different rates on different brands. So it's by brand, by market. And then you're applying exponential smoothing, trend adjustment, seasonal profiling. Because again, Arizona does not have the same seasonal profile as Oregon does, right? Florida has a very specific seasonal profile that is wildly different than the Northeast. And those things have to be accounted for. So that when you're looking at these numbers and you're looking at them on a monthly basis, that you're like, oh shit, it's January. What the hell happened in Florida? Well, that's peak season, right? Yeah. Whereas in the Northeast, it's the low point of the year. It's the dry January. But that's when all the tourists are heading into January, February into Florida. So all this to say is that if you're a supplier listening to this, or you're interacting with suppliers, challenge your suppliers on the methodology they're using. And if you're a supplier listening, I challenge you to, use a forecasting methodology and look at your core brands, right? So I'm not saying there needs to be something outside of quantitative. I'm quantitative, but on the supplier's side, you take your base business and the base markets you're in, right? And all of you have IDIG data for the most part, if you're of any size. And that gives you insight into sales by brand, by SKU, by day, by wholesaler. So why are you buying that data if you're not using it? So use that data to drive a quantitative forecast around your core business, by brand, by market. From there, you can start to look at expansion markets, right? And you can also look at brand extensions, our new product launches. And again, I would challenge the methodology there too around, if you're launching a new market, ask your distributor, okay, do you have any like suppliers? Okay, I agree those 4 or 5 are like. Can you share with me what you think, based on the way they launched, a good base number is? Right? And I know you want to come in and say, I'm the best brand and best supplier that's ever existed, and that data is not relevant to me, but it is relevant to you. Because it's relevant to that market, it's relevant to that distributor, it's relevant to the type of products you're selling and what that market can bear. And we can get into, further conversations about how you could do better than that. But I think at a baseline, you can always LE forecast or adjust after the fact, but it gives you a good baseline. That also allows you to back into production, back into initial loads, all of this, that's key. Because what you don't want is, hey, yeah, I'll take 4 truckloads in, September. Well, we get to August, like, okay, I've got your 4 truckloads, right? Like, maybe it's just one.
Yeah.
And I've seen that many times, because when you're courting, when you're dating, you're like, oh yeah, this is the greatest product ever. We're gonna sell the shit out of it. And you're, as a supplier, like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then you get to the actual load, it's like 1/4 of what they promised. But they temper it with saying, hey, well, let's take that first truckload, and when we sell it, we'll order those other 3. The other 3 never comes.
No. I love that you said ask your distributors what they think based on same like brands or suppliers, and you let them come with a number, because what's incredible about that in the like negotiations and human behavior is that they're opting into a number first, and as a distributor to you as a supplier, and you're actually asking for their expertise versus you pushing a number down, and now there's resistance in that back and forth. It becomes specifically if there's somebody who thinks like the 3 of us, there's gonna be a resistance and pushback. But Mike, you would always be one to be like, yep, I'll take it. I'll give you an analysis and I'll tell you exactly where I think it's going to be. And if we're willing to say that as a distributor, we're way more likely to agree with that with whatever order plan, whatever launch plan, or whatever else, because we built it from the bottom up. And it's more likely to get an agreement, which is really what you're looking for as a supplier. You want to get agreement and directionality around a production plan, because you have to manufacture this product. You have to produce it. You have to set the tank space aside. You got to buy all the cans. You got to buy the secondary packaging or the mother cartons in some way. And you got to make this plan come to life. So if you're forcing that down, there'll be more resistance up from the bottom than if you're just like, hey, tell me the 6 suppliers that are like this, or the 3 or 4 brands that are like this. How did they launch? If we were to launch a product just like that, what would you think it would do in your market? Get the number. Can you commit to that? Like, ask the question, can you commit? If you think that's how much you're going to sell, can you commit to that on an order if I make that product for you? And they'll say yes or no. They'll say, I would do a third of that on paper to actually buy it. Cool. Can you commit to that? Yes. Move forward. Mikey, when you were working with suppliers around this ABP stuff, anything that you saw? Because I stepped back from participating in ABPs. I came to loathe them and push them onto you and Tommy. One of the reasons why I loathe them is that I just wanted to be out of the game of like listening to all the sugar plum fairies and gumdrop trees of all the rosy plans that were going to happen. I didn't want to have that muddy the waters on what I was setting as a budget internally for the plan either. But you've got to have a couple suppliers that you thought did well, or a couple things you could model as a brand manager, because you played that role too, of how you saw people do things well over poorly.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of ABPs, and most of them are just PowerPoints about PowerPoints, right? And when you really step away from all the noise, the best supplier meetings are joint forecasts, right? Not brand pep rallies. I can get excited about your brand. Show me the opportunities. I don't need to sit through a pep rally and get all excited and go, oh, yeah, well, yep, you're right. I can sell 10,000 cases of that. But if your supplier is coming at you and their plan is 10% up on a flat brand, the polite response is, show me where that 10% lives, right? It's not in my route accounting system data. I'm not seeing these trends. Show me where that 10% is coming from. Let's base this off of reality, not wishful thinking and optimism. And the good suppliers, they bring forecasts, not fantasies. Right. And starting with a baseline, assuming nothing changes, same brands, same territory, same seasonality, digging into your route accounting system, digging up those velocity reports, like you said, your 12-month moving totals, where have we been, your 13-week moving total, where are we headed, and then modeling off of that, what's realistically achievable. And like I said, that is a joint forecasting session, and that's what I see the best suppliers doing. And you're going to get results too, and it's not going to be wishful thinking. And then 2 months in, we're beating up our sales team if you guys didn't accomplish that. Well, it wasn't going to even be able to be accomplished because we were already 15% down on the brand. And now we're asking to be positive 10 with a net change of 25. And how are we going to do that with our current structure and current plan? But yeah, I think, sitting back and eliminating the noise and the pep rallies of these ABPs and digging into your data and having some hard numbers of where the brand is and are there missed opportunities on the table and basing it off of that.
Yeah, and those PowerPoints, I wish they had been more focused on put yourself, again, having been on both sides of the industry, think about think about who you're talking to and what their incentive structure is. If you're a supplier coming in, the distributor doesn't want to see a bunch of like flashy brand crap and who, who your mascot is or whatever, or who you what celebrities endorsing this. Tell me where the profitability lies, and then I can kind of figure out where it fits in my portfolio. And if you come in and then we're sitting around, I'm like, where's that 10% coming from? Ask me. Like, I really need 10%. How do we get there? Instead of saying, then we can have a productive conversation, which is, okay, cool. What can we do about these margins? If you get me another $1 case, I guarantee you I'm going to get your 10 plus. Right. And again, that's in a distributor where we were hyper focused on profitability per case, but understand the language of the distributor walking into. And it may not be GP, maybe it's something else, but it got to the point where my suppliers were coming in and the first slide was profitability. That's what the slide I wanted to see. So they got smart and they started with that. Right. And if you could just throw in a bunch of crap at me about how like WeMan is part of your sponsorship program now, then like, I don't care.
That's a real story. There's got to be a real story behind that.
Yeah, that didn't get picked out of thin air.
That didn't get picked up out of thin air. that is a real story. Somebody showed up with a WeMan boost. Oh, I love it.
If you've been around the industry long enough, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So 2026 success looks like for those distributors out there that own the budget and suppliers who want to meet distributors where they're at. Like at the end of the day, that's what you're talking about. And you're not talking about repositioning your brand presentation you give to a retailer, particularly like a chain buyer, around because that's what a lot of these ABP like PowerPoints are. They're probably remanufactured. I have no knowledge if this is true or not, but I know how people think and I know how people work, and they're sometimes like lazy, and it's really easy to regurgitate a chain buyer brand presentation and slap a couple of wholesaler metrics on it and call it your ABP guide for the year, or call it your ABP, plan for the year. And that's not what we're looking for. And that is not where the most suppliers are going to be the most successful. And if you're a wholesaler, listen to this, and you see that, push back and be more direct and articulate over what you are expecting to see and what is going to drive your attention and why your team is focused on this. And get serious about setting your own budget and setting your own plan with your own expectations. Many of you have talented finance folks around you, talented, sales analysts and sales admins that can help you do this. You don't have to be the only one that does it, and you can build it out smart. And you don't have to look very far to see this. GP per CE is our North Star. And that's what we think drives the business forward every single day. And it compounds over time. And the more you can get that to compound, the more you can grow your profits, regardless of what happens to volume. And at the end of the day, that's the controllable that we're trying to control when we work with clients, and what we're talking about here with the podcast day in and day out too.
And as a supplier, come in knowing the distributor's business, come in, know what the trends are, right? Know where the profitability is, know these things. Right. I have a ton more respect for somebody coming in that has done the research to know what's going on in my business. If they come in, they have no clue. For example, Mike, you said it best, which is you come in with an ask for 10%, then you should already know that we're at flat. Right. It shouldn't be hey, we're at flat, and they should, they go like a ghost. That's a brand new knowledge for them. Whoa, you buy our data from VIP. Pull an IDIG report, dude. Know my business before you walk in the door, because I've got it right here. I know your business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So know mine.
Super.
A little bit of news for this week to kind of touch on, to get your guys' perspective. A little sad news too. Molson Coors is going to eliminate 400 positions, or 9% of the workforce in the U.S., or in the America regions is actually what they call it. So Coors Light and Coors Light, Molson Coors volume down 7%, Coors Light down 6.3, Miller Lite down 7.5. This is just like challenges with the headwinds in the market. There's also related to a little bit of the new CEO coming in and just turning over and looking at where he wants to set his org chart, how the org chart works, and everything else. But it is indicative of the headwinds that we continue to see. I bring this up today. Yes, it's a sad story, but I also bring this up today as that these are data points that you can use outside of your budgeting plan to talk with your family or talk with the people that you're building this for around, like, this is the seriousness of the overall organization or of the overall industry. And this is why I'm setting expectations this way now, because these are some of the other hard data points that are outside of our four walls that we see happening globally or happening regionally. And this is why I want to negotiate with you now over these numbers, so I don't have to apologize later for them. So use these kind of knowledge, use the trade press information that you get to your benefit as well too. So kind of a bummer though, right? To see this news late in the year.
Super bummer. Yeah, you don't want to hear about anybody losing their job. Obviously, no matter who your main supplier is, you don't want to hear that because it's just bad for the industry. We want to see our industry growing and hiring more people and taking on new jobs. So yeah, super sad.
Good thing though is that Coors
to me-
Banquet is up. That is an incredible beer, and it is growing.
I've always liked it. It goes back
It's
to your
such a good beer.
it goes back to your point, bud, about keeping the branding the way it was. That's a great example.
Yeah.
My takeaway is that this is a bad sign overall, and I don't mean to be negative here, but if one of the largest suppliers is throwing in the towel and basically saying that I'm not going to wait and see if things get better, I'm just going to assume they're not. That is not a good picture ahead of what's coming. That doesn't mean it's not a hard and fast rule, but I suspect what that means, and there's some smart people over there, they expect these declines that our industry's seeing, specifically around alcohol, to continue, and in beer. They will continue, probably for another 12 to 24 months at least. Because again, they're doing forecasting, and their forecasting says this shit ain't ending, right? In fact, it may get worse. So, I don't think this is simply the AI took my job situation. I don't think that's not our industry yet.
Sadly, there's a movement right now, right, of going sober and giving up alcohol, and it's a powerful movement. I researched last week when we were talking about those good for you seltzers, right, or what I don't forget the actual name of them, but and that movement is targeted for people that are giving up alcohol, right, or that brand is targeted for people that are giving up alcohol. So, anyways, I did a quick Google search. There's my lights again. I did a quick.
The lights are gone. I love it.
No, they're not coming back on. But I did a quick Google search on those products to learn a little bit more about them because I was curious. And now ever since then, all of my ads, right, on social media, all of the ads that are targeted to me are about giving up alcohol. Why did I go sober?
Really?
How can you give up alcohol? Yeah, I mean, it's seriously, it's almost every single ad on my phone, and that's crazy. That is not good for our industry, right? I mean, that was one search.
What are
on
they
a
selling? Are
particular
they selling
brand.
a product, a course, or a functional seltzer, or an energy drink in somewhere? Are they selling you drinking something
No,
else?
so
Or are they selling a course to get you sober?
No, it's like reels, mostly reels and
Yeah.
memes and stuff like that of just why I gave up alcohol, how you can give up alcohol, the 7-day challenge, the 10-day challenge, how to get yourself, completely sober. It's wild. And no, there is no product behind it. It really isn't. And that's scary. That's all the generation right now that, is in social media. And if you click in any of those products and you're targeted for these ads, it's not what we want to be telling people. We want to make sure that they know that you can still drink with moderation. You can still have a good time and not be, getting hammered every single night.
Yeah, I think that there's under the surface there, besides the overall trends, and it's a lot podcast driven too, and that's the way the younger generation's consuming their information now. It's moved to a different direction. But I think these new age companies are also better at marketing. They're taking advantage of these, client acquisition. I mean, they're looking at the funnels. They're figuring out the cost of acquisition, the lifetime value of customers. They're doing things, and not only that, but they're well capitalized and well funded. That goes back to what I said in the call last week, or the call, the pod last week, around understand the motivations and the structure of your suppliers. And again, it's growth at all cost, and they may be fine burning cash. And they're, it's client acquisition at all cost. And, they're not talking about Super Bowl commercials. They're spending tons of money through digital marketing, right? Mike, you left a footprint. This is why you use an incognito on your browser.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Seriously. And this is why you don't have those Amazon devices in your house.
But how many people are doing that?
Everybody.
Right. I mean, you think everybody's?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're being curious about a product, so you click on one thing, and then boom, here is just this whole marketing campaign of why you should be sober.
Yeah, but you trip the metrics, and they know exactly that profile, what you looked at, what you talked about, what the what the odds of your conversion to a customer is. I mean, these are not insignificant companies that are handling this go-to-market strategy.
Well, let's look at an example of this too. This is fascinating. I read this news story over the weekend. It was, did we lose Ross?
No, I'm right here.
You're right here? Okay, I just don't see you for some reason. So I read this Wall Street Journal article over the weekend. It's titled, "Girl, Take Your Crazy Pills, Antidepressants Recast as the Hot Lifestyle Accessory." And this whole thing is about young women that are taking and being marketed Lexapro, which is an antidepressant, and how they're using influencer marketing to talk about women taking this is word for word.
Is this
Take
legal?
Your crazy pills. And it's dead real. Like these are all real humans that have made t-shirts, Lexapro, like t-shirts here. Yes, for sure.
This can't be legal.
I don't know if it's legal, but it's definitely real. And that now these influencers are weaning themselves off this drug that they've marketed, are talking about the side effects that they've taken under, and look at that growth of these drugs over the last, this is from 2020 to 2025 or 20. Yeah, this is monthly. It looks like it's all the way through to end of 2025, to now, but look at the growth in women of these drugs being marketed from online. And this is the kind of competition that you're talking about, Mike, that the industry is coping with in very interesting ways. And Alex Earl, one of the most popular celebrities on the planet, is one of the women that's actively talking about these products on a regular basis.
Wild.
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah. And I think that, a couple of years ago, we were talking about the introduction of THC into the industry. And, that's different. That's a different consumer. And what I said back then was, we're competing for marginal dollars here. And I think we need to recognize that. And I think it's proven now, right? And not only is the lower end consumer and the middle consumer getting squeezed, so the amount of available dollars is constricting, but there's a lot more competition for these marginal dollars, right? And it's not just, liquor versus beer versus wine. Like we
not
need to
all over the counter. Yeah.
It's not all over the counter. And I think we need to be, honest about that innovation, expansion, and all these different things doesn't yield incremental dollars. And again, it goes back to, as a distributor, we're in a blessed and advantaged position where, we can move with the times. Some of these larger suppliers, they can try, but at the end of the day, when 95% of your business is in a category, it's very difficult to innovate and shift your way out of it.
I did a coaching session today with a group of new reps that were at, like a training session with a coach and with a group of new reps at a client. And there were 4 things that I couldn't pronounce that are all new things that their client's selling. And like, I had to get one of the team leads, Chuck, is like, Chuck, you got to help me say these things, bro. Like, I have no clue how to pronounce these things at all. And they're all incredibly high profits and revenues for the wholesaler. And it's like just discovering and how you can discover these opportunities and understand how they can grow the incremental side of the business. But we got like, these are things we would not have sold 5 years ago, let alone a beer guy knows how to pronounce.
Mhm.
We need to get our asses educated around this. I mean, we're having a hard time keeping up. So I can't imagine what everybody else in the industry is doing.
For sure.
I mean,
For
I'm
sure.
sitting here listening at NBWA, listening to this guy pitch his product. I'm like, if I drink this, am I gonna hallucinate?
Yeah. The mushrooms?
Yeah. He was like, the way he was describing it, I'm like, oh shit, dude, am I gonna have a trip here? Like, I don't know if I want to take a sip of this.
And the psychedelic mushrooms all over the label too. I mean, it was a little intimidating. Curious and intimidating at the same time.
I need an accountability, accountability buddy to before I take a drink of this.
somebody to rope yourself to and make sure you don't wander off.
Yeah.
Hog time. If something goes wrong.
I probably wouldn't try it for the first time in Vegas. That could be bad. I've seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the movie.
Oh, dude. But remember that sample that we tried?
Yeah, I do. I was telling the story yesterday.
You know what was funny, Mike, this week, as we kind of wind down the episode, but this week, it was yesterday, Ross and I were on a call, and I said, what are you smiling about? Like, I don't remember who was talking. He's like, what are you smiling about? He's like, oh, I'm watching the pod. I'm like, we're on a call. Like, we're doing, he's like, no, I'm watching the part of the beeper, because I plugged in, I don't know if you've seen it yet, I plugged in the clip from The Hangovers. Is this hotel pager friendly?
Nice. I'll have to go back and watch that.
Oh, I love it. Well,
good stuff.
if you like what we're doing, continue to listen, subscribe, share a review, share it with a friend in the industry. One of the things that if anybody wants to hit us up with questions, call bullshit on what we talk about, our email is vxptech.com, or it's actually info@vxptech.com. That's vxp at info, or it's info at, well, I'm gonna have to like redo this whole section.
Did you get it out, bud?
Did you do some of that mushroom stuff?
Maybe I took the mushroom stuff. Yes, maybe I took the mushroom stuff. Our email is info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. There it is. Hit us up with an email. You can find us there or at an industry event near you. I'm probably very, very soon. And thank you, boys, for joining me today. Another great episode. Love you guys, and cheers.
Cheers.